Longtime elementary school teachers, which of your former students surprised you the most by their adult life outcomes or personality?
I taught in a low-income, high-immigrant community for my entire career. I loved where I taught and still have tremendous fondness and admiration for the community, as powerfully challenging as it was to teach a population with such limited resources. I had a student in 3rd grade who was sweet, kind, and goofy, but the typical never-do homework, mediocre to poor grades type at the time. When I moved up to teaching middle school and had him again in 6th grade, little had changed. I liked him as a person quite a lot, but academically and effort-wise he was a solid D student. Fast forward a decade or so, I had to retire from the classroom early and a bit abruptly due to a health crisis, resulting brain surgery, and the aftermath. This devastated me. At the time, I posted about how much I missed teaching and my heartbreak over it on my Facebook page. This now adult student, who had added me as a friend but rarely to never posted anything anywhere on FB, commented the most heartwarming words about what an inspiration I'd been and how he felt I'd started him on the path that led him to a degree in chemical engineering from a major university. He was the first in his family to go to college, nonetheless earn a degree. His kind and generous words made me weep, and his academic success left me stunned. If you had asked me back when he was in 3rd or 6th grade which student would be the one to earn a degree in engineering, I think I would have gone through 2/3 of the class before I'd have even thought of him. Edit number 1. Holy, wow. I typed this up just before turning the light off in bed, and woke up to so many comments and awards and support. Thank you guys, all of you. Probably because I'd recalled this memory just before going to sleep, I had a rather vivid, somewhat desperate dream about teaching and being back in that community with all of my current health issues. I was trying so hard and found myself literally lost in the town, using my broken Spanish to try and find my way and encountering former and current students who helped me along. It's been 7.5 years since I was last in the classroom and I've gone through a lengthy and painful grieving process, but in the last couple of years I've found acceptance if not peace with what I cannot and could not control. But man, I loved what I did and I loved every one of those kiddos. Every one. That took some effort for some of them, but I made a point to find a way. I always told them on the last day of school, you were my students for a year, but you are my kids forever. Thank you again, everyone, for your kind words and awards. Edit number 2. Changed BA to degree. Whoops. I typed this right before I turned the lights off and went to sleep, so I wasn't my most alert. I don't remember him actually saying BA, BS, just that he's gotten a degree in chemical engineering and the university he got it from. It's my ignorant ass that mixed up the letters, not him. Smiley face.
Damn, that is inspirational. Just goes to show how important a good teacher can be, which people often forget.
I had a student that used to get into fights and was extremely aggressive and violent towards others. On the last day of 5th grade his last words to me in his class were, "F you." Many years later he came back to the school I'd been teaching at and looked for me so he could give me a big hug and apologize. In his words, "I was garbage when I was here, thank you for putting up with me and I'm sorry." I cried like a baby. I was so proud of him. You know, teaching can sometimes be a thankless job and a lot of the things I'm really proud about are usually only shared between me and my students. They don't give out a lot of medals to teachers, ya know. Anyway, thanks for your time and attention. Overwhelmed by how many people got to share one of the best moments of my career with me in this friggin' post.
Did he explain why he was angry? And how did he get past this?
The student whose social skills were non-existent and whose academics were equally as troubling is in college taking nuclear physics. I swear he was easily like 3 grades behind when I knew him in primary, junior grades, Canada.
I have a friend who had mediocre grades as a kid because he had untreated ADHD, was heavily bullied, had no social skills, and did badly on rote memory standardized tests which tested a broad area of topics. He's really good at math, not so much at languages. But as we got older, the materials got better and more specialized, so he had a perfect score for the uni entrance exam and is now one of the top students there in computer science. Although he still has no social skills, so I guess you can't have everything.
Good for him, that's always nice to hear. As an educator I can say with conviction that standardized tests are a joke and so is almost everything involving rote memorization.
I started in elementary school. One of my first students I had when she was in 3rd grade. Her father was abusive when she was younger and mom left him and was raising her on her own, but her mom was also heavily involved in gangs. She was very behind compared to the rest of the kids, but she was always very helpful to the other children, me, and the staff. I had a soft spot for her and she ended up being one of my favorites. Teachers will often say they don't have favorites, but that's a lie. A couple years later I was moved to 5th grade and I had her again. She was struggling a lot by this time, but still, I never gave up on her, and she never gave up either. Later, when she was in 8th grade, I was moved to middle school, and once again, I had her again. By this time her mom's lifestyle had an influence. She always wore red, threw up gang signs, and used to get into a lot of fights at school. One thing that was different was she had caught up academically with the rest of her peers, and actually even surpassed many of them. She used to come by after school and started seeing me as a mentor, and we had a connection, as I too was heavily involved with gangs in my teens and early 20s. When she moved on to high school, she kept in touch. Her high school was across the street and she used to come by after school all the time to check in. She eventually got involved in student body, became the senior class president, and was on the honor roll all 4 years. She got accepted into all 8 colleges she applied for. She is currently on a full-ride scholarship at Stanford University and plans to continue with graduate school. She is very involved with the community too. She is currently 20 and a waitress but is planning on doing big things, and I know she will. I'm so proud of her.
I'm not one of these great success stories, but I'm back home visiting and actually ran into my 3rd grade teacher at Starbucks. I was working on my laptop WFH, but my parents' Wi-Fi is crap, so I work at Starbucks when I visit. I saw her sit down and it just kept bugging me why she looked so familiar, because I swear when I was in 3rd grade one thought she was at least in her 50s, so she would have to be like, in her late 70s now or something like that. Chalk it up to a child's memory. Anyway, when I noticed she was getting ready to leave, I asked if she was Miss 3rd grade and she said yes with a kind of confused tone, and I explained who I was and that she had been my teacher. She was so excited to see a former student and kept thanking me for taking a chance and saying hi to her, and that she wished more students would do that because she loves getting to hear about her former students' lives. So I guess if you are on the other side of this question and you see a former teacher, don't be afraid to reach out and just say hi, explain who you are, and just thank them for their role in your education. She remembered me as the little girl obsessed with acting and reading. Still true today.
Teachers love this. A couple years after we graduated high school, my friend and I went to the elementary and high school and sought out old teachers. Everyone was excited to see us. My friend was a teacher and she got an email from someone asking if she taught so and so. The former student wrote that she just wanted to say hi and she was her favorite teacher. My friend told me this through tears.
I guess my mum might count since she's worked at the elementary school I attended since 1993, but she recently told me about one of my elementary school classmates. I was actually pretty good friends with him, but I thought he was a bit slow. And apparently, he had been evaluated for learning disorders several times in early grade school. He apparently just started a surgery fellowship at a prestigious hospital in Philadelphia. He definitely worked very hard in grade school and middle school, and now that I look back, he definitely sought out the smart kids in class and tried to befriend them and see how they thought.
There was a kid in my high school class who had severe dyslexia and acalculia, and although he clearly had a sharp mind when you spoke to him, it wasn't clear he was going to go far. His main interest back in school was blowing poo up and building bombs, and he went off to mining school so that he could work with explosives. He got his PhD before I got my bachelor's, for building a robot that goes down mines and uses lasers to make a 3D map of the mine, doing a week's work for a surveying team in a couple hours, and without putting human lives at risk. He's charming, his wife and kids are charming, and he builds robots with frickin' lasers on them. Not bad for the kid couldn't read and only cared about blowing poo up. Not me, but know a guy, lovely quiet chap who lived to draw. Teacher said his work was no good. Went on to be a senior effects artist and later works for a major computer games company and can of course, draw.
Found your friend, link.
Lol.
Was connected on social media with a former grade school teacher who shared a news article about a former student who got arrested for selling meth with an estimated worth of $500,000. Peas. The teacher is now a high school teacher.
Good at math and measurements.
Not me, but a kid who used to be my friend. He was studios. He got good grades. Teachers loved him. He was well behaved. He wasn't bullied. He didn't bully other kids. He had a lot of friends. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't unpopular. He was definitely more popular than me though. No one had a problem with him. Since he got good grades, his parents let him do whatever he wanted. They bought him whatever he wanted. He had the latest video games and consoles as they came out. We loved sleeping over his house because we could stay up all night, jump on the trampoline at 2 in the morning, and we didn't even have to sneak out for mischief. We could just walk out the door. Anyways, he moved in 8th grade. I was sad. A couple years back someone sends me a Facebook message of a local article. This guy stabbed someone 23 times and is awaiting a murder trial. I have no clue where his life took a hard left turn, but it did clearly. Edit. Added details.
That's wild. And sad. It's strange when it's someone you knew.
Yeah, if I had to pick someone from my elementary, middle school classes to be a murderer, it would have absolutely not been him.
My brother was tutored by an elementary school teacher and he was a complete mess of a student as a kid. She was helping him transition from a top prep school to public school because the prep school didn't feel he would ever amount to much in their care. She tried several methods to keep him organized and help his reading skills to no avail. She continuously checked in with his teacher, worked at the same school, to see his progress and constantly had to talk to him on behalf of the teacher. Everyone loved him, he was just an utter mess. We ran into her a year ago and got to tell her that he got a full ride to law school at an Ivy League school. Blew her mind, but proof that some kids thrive in different learning environment. Terrible through traditional school, but when he got to college, he thrived because of breaks between classes, time to study, picked his classes which were focused than trying to cover 1,000 topics in a year, and got to know his teachers. Thank goodness for my parents holding out hope all those years, haha.
I teach English as a second language and I had a kid who spoke Arabic who barely could master English in the beginning, to be expected of course. Well, 8 years later he's on his way to being an astrophysicist. He came to school to find me to tell me last year and I've never had a prouder moment teaching. He told me I was the only one who believed in him. Edit. Wow. Thank you so much for the awards and sweet comments. They mean a lot to me after an exhausting year of remote and hybrid teaching. If you're thinking about reaching out to a teacher, totally do it. We've had a crazy year and I'd bet $1 million it would mean so much to them. And for all my ESL and multilingual kiddos in this thread, I'm so proud of you, heart.
I got to do something, well, not as staggering as saying I'm an astrophysicist, but still got to blow my old teacher's mind. His name was Mr. Quinn, and he was the drama teacher at my high school. I was one of the 4-year wonders, the kids who got into drama freshman year and never left. Most stayed because of the social dynamic, but I stayed because I loved theater. After graduating, I got a job, went to community college, my grades weren't abysmal, but not great. Started taking classes in audio recording. Got introduced through those classes to the head sound technician for our City Opera Association. He offered me a job shadow. Then gave me an application for the Stagehands Union and told me to sign up. That was June of 2006. In September of 2006, I got my first call to work a show, tearing down the Broadway show Wicked. I did pretty good for my first time ever working a show that was that big. I was told to expect more calls. Pretty soon I got another call to work on Sweet Charity. Then a Rascal Flatts concert. Then a Disney on Ice show. It was after the Ice show that I went back to my high school and found Mr. Quinn. When I told him that I was now a professional stagehand, had already worked in a couple different venues, and was about to start working on a run of Bolero, he actually wept. You're the first ever, of all my students, to go pro. For the next 6 years, he would have me come in and talk to his tech theater classes. And I dropped by a bit more often, just to tell him about shows I was working on. He was super excited when I told him I had worked on an environmentalism summit hosted by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and that I had gotten to meet His Holiness and received his blessing and a prayer shawl. Sadly, colon cancer decided that Mr. Quinn had been having too much fun. I saw him a few weeks before he passed, telling him about working a new production of Faust and how difficult the TD was being and that one of the lead carpenters had smashed his finger. Mr. Quinn laughed. And he told me how proud he was of me. When he died, I cried like a lost child. And I'm still a stagehand. Now I'm a crew lead, and production staff for an NBA team. I go back to work next week for the playoffs. And I'll be thinking of Mr. Quinn the entire time.
That's the good stuff of teaching. We love when they come back, smiley face.
Not an elementary school teacher, but as a former child, I have something to say for Mr. Folly. F you Mr. Folly, I'm good at drawing.
As a former child LMFAO.
I've been on our PTA for a long time, does that count? There was a very skinny quiet kid who was super smart. The other kids picked on him quite a lot, but he never stood up for himself. I always thought he would work for NASA or something as he was so smart. I saw his LinkedIn a few months ago and he is now a prison officer at a maximum security prison.
half the smart kids from high school are doing great and the other half are the host at Applebee's, and it's so confusing.
Not a teacher, but my best friend in high school was the most picked on kid in a high school of 4,000 students. He definitely wasn't much of an academic and seemed destined for barely getting through life. He's now worked his way up in fast food, has franchised a couple Dairy Queens, and worked for Homeland Security in between.
Till Homeland Security has connections in Dairy Queen. Not mine but my mom's story. She used to teach the 2nd grade and there was a kid who was ruthlessly bullied because he had another finger on his hand. He didn't come from a very good background and had to work jobs in the middle of school for his family. This is pretty common for low-income families in India. He was shouted at a lot by the principal as he missed like half of the school, so my mom told him to come to our house so she could tutor him every few days. He's now studying mechanical engineering at IIT, very prestigious university in India, and reached to my mom on Facebook and thanked her.
I had to be tutored for reading during elementary school. The same teacher came to my house after school a few times a week to help me. Years later, my mom ran into her, and she asked how I was doing. She was so incredibly happy and shocked to hear I was an English major applying to library science graduate programs.
I'm not a teacher, but something along the lines happened to one of the kids I graduated with. She was top of the grade for academics and sportswoman of the year every single year since we were 13. She was head prefect in middle school and head girl of our high school in our matric year. Both her parents were senior management at our old middle school. She was very, very rich. Both her parents drove sport cars and she got an Audi SUV for her birthday. She also lived in a Poe's huge house. Last thing I heard from her is that she got accepted into one of the best universities in the country, Stellenbosch University, for veterinarian science. I mean, if anyone was going to succeed, it would be her. She's now a secretary at a run-down accounting firm in Pretoria that's badly in debt. She's also been to rehab twice. I have no idea what happened to her, but it just shows. Nothing is cast in stone.
I was voted most likely to burn a book, ended up writing one. Edit. So my most upvoted comment is how people in high school thought I was a dumbass. That's typical. If anyone is interested in my book, I am happy to tell you the title, but I don't want to get banned for advertising, so PM me.
Was it Burning Books for Dummies? S.
My mom has been a teacher for the past 25 plus years. There was one student in particular that stood out. This kid was insanely smart. In high school, perfect grades, he also got scholarships on scholarships plus full ride to almost any college he wanted. I think he wanted to be a physicist or engineer for NASA. After high school he headed off to college and fell off of everyone's radar for a while. We learned a few years later what happened. The extreme pressure to always be the best ended up getting to him. Everyone in his life understandably had super high expectations for him, but he couldn't handle it. He had a massive mental breakdown and ended up dropping out of college and went to work in some chain fast food place. I didn't know him personally, and only met him in passing, but even I was sad. Such a brilliant mind, someone who had a lot of potential, reduced to a tiny fraction of himself. It's been several years since then, and I hope he is doing better. I grew up with this one girl, who ran cross-country and track in junior high. I went to a little school, so a lot of times they will let 4th and 5th graders run with the junior high kids. This girl, she hit growth spurt when we were still in elementary school. She towered over boys and girls. Unfortunately, this doesn't help with running. She was an awkward runner and she would often get last place in cross-country. Our track coach didn't know what to do with her, so he put her in the 800, 400, 200, and long jump. I don't think she beat anyone in 4th or 5th grade. I felt super bad for her, because she is super nice, just wasn't an athlete. I think by the end of 5th grade, her PRs, personal records, were around 2 in the 400, 410-20 in the 800, 9-6 in long jump, and 50-ish in the 200. Well, fast forward a couple months, and she is already better in cross-country. She ends up crushing her PR from the year before. Then track came, and she really started to improve. Every year she got better and better. Fast forward 4 years, and we are now sophomores. She has already broken the school long jump and 800 records, and will probably break the 200 and 400 records. She also anchors all the relays she is in. Kind of crazy to remember that she wasn't always super fast.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.